Joining us now on Practical 365 is Microsoft MVP Peter Rising. Hi Peter, welcome to the show.
Hi Steve, thanks for having me.
How are you?
I'm well, I'm really good. I've had a busy week. It's Friday, I'm pleased to say, and short week, but it's felt like a long week, but so I'm happy it's the weekend.
So as an MVP, you write for Practical 365 about all sorts of topics, security and compliance being one of them, but you've also authored several books on Microsoft 365 exams as well, haven't you?
I have, well, two in actual fact, or I could even say 1.5, because one is an MS 500 exam guide, Microsoft 365 Security Administration, which I wrote about a year and a bit ago now, my first book, and then more recently, MS 700, the Microsoft Teams exam, which I co-wrote with fellow MVP Nate Chamberlain, who's based in the US.
So I was looking at those, and you've got some really good reviews of those books as well. Loads of good ratings on Amazon for those I see, which is always positive, especially for an exam guide. That usually means people have taken the exams and passed after getting some expertise from yourself. So I thought I'd get you on the show to talk to everybody about Microsoft exams, because it's an area where I must admit I haven't taken an exam in quite a while now, maybe a year, and I need to get back on that horse. And I'm sure there's a few others with the big slew of Microsoft exams out there for M365 who are planning on doing the same. So how many exams have you taken lately?
Much like yourself, Steve, very little. In fact, I only took one exam last year, which was the MS 700, which I thought I'd better take that one as I was writing a book about it. But the year before, 2019, I think I took 7 or 8 exams. I went mad that year.
Wow.
But yeah.
That's a lot to do in a year. Wow. So you've got pretty much up to date on a lot of the exams over the last couple of years. So if somebody's wondering, why do I need to do this sort of stuff? Why do I need to do exams? What's the benefit to you or your company in taking Microsoft exams?
Yeah, so I think first and foremost, it's a really good way to validate your existing skills, which you may or may not already have. If not, then you can get new skills whilst learning for that exam, which is great, and there's all sorts of ways to study for them. But for your company that you work for, if they're a Microsoft partner, for example, they may need a certain amount of people to take a certain amount of exams to get various competencies that they need for gold certification and that sort of thing. So lots of great reasons to take them. And some companies also reward you for taking exams as well. You might get an exam bonus. Yeah. So lots of good reasons why.
That's very true. I mean, certainly on the Microsoft partner side, then that's quite common, because ultimately there is a lifespan to taking an exam, isn't there? So 5 years from now they'll be less relevant. Most people don't change jobs very often. So wherever I've worked on the Microsoft partner side, then they've always paid for the exams. And of course, if it's to do with that kind of goal, then there's always some sort of motivation to try and get you to spend some of your time learning about this. But I agree, validating your skills is super important, isn't it? Especially if you're doing it for personal reasons to move on your career as well.
Definitely, and it's a real boost taking and passing an exam as well. I mean, I'm not somebody who was ever particularly academically minded. I did terrible at school. I got 1 GCSE, I think, with a decent grade, and I've not particularly enjoyed academia at all. And when I took my first Microsoft exam, I didn't expect to pass. I thought, oh, I can't do this. But when I did, I actually got quite emotional doing that first one. And then it was like, I just became possessed after that and started taking more and more. I got the bug for it. And you tend to find that.
That the same happened to me. I mean, I didn't do too bad in my exams at school, but I think I went through a long sort of phase where I hadn't got any qualifications at all, really. I'd been working IT on the customer side for a long time, and I'd moved up the ranks, so I knew my stuff pretty well, but I felt like there was a big gap, and I needed a bit of validation as well. So back then, I think it was 2003 MCSE exams, and I think I ended up doing all of those I was worried about taking them. So I had the exam vouchers from work, and they sat there for a year, and I had a month to take them all. Otherwise, they expired. Could have been longer, maybe even 18 months. So I ended up having to take them all in a month. And that was not recommended
No.
in any way. But, the relief, and some of them, like the networking ones as well, very much like out of my own comfort zone. But it was important. It made a big difference to the way I felt about myself and my skills. So if you were looking to start on that Microsoft 365 track, you'll go to the Microsoft Learning Portal. There's a lot of options there. There's all these different badges you can get, and where should you start?
Well, I think a logical place to start from a Microsoft 365 point of view is probably the MS 100 and 101, which is sort of Microsoft 365 administration and enterprise mobility and security, and those are the two real entry ones. The modern day equivalent of what used to be, if you knew that the Office 365 MCSA, those old 346 and 347 exams. Remember the numbers.
You remember them better than me. I have done them, but I couldn't. So long ago, I can't remember.
Yeah,
but people who did those at the time, they were quite easy, in comparison to some of these modern exams, where I know passing a lot of these newer exams, it is especially the more complex ones, they are more of an achievement to pass, because it's not basic knowledge of Office 365. Some of these are very deep dive stuff. So starting with 100 and 101, that's a good on ramp to deciding. Do you decide a direction after that, or to follow a track for something like Microsoft 365 certified enterprise administrator expert?
Yeah, exactly. There are 2-star exams and 3-star exams. So doing that 100 and 101, after you've got those under your belt, you can, if you want to go for the Enterprise Administrator Expert cert, which is the 3-star cert, you need to take another exam to get you there, and you can do the Security Administration one, which was what my first book was about, which is MS 500. That's a very, very tough exam, but it's basically a combination of the 100 and 101 with a little bit of other stuff thrown in. Or what a colleague of mine did. She wasn't quite as into the security and compliance side of things. She was more about collaboration and teams and that sort of direction. She took the MS 700, the Teams Administration exam, having done the 100.
Sounds like there's a good book for both of those.
There might well be. I don't know who
Funny
could have
that.
written it.
So apart from getting a decent exam prep guide, which I feel confident in saying given the reviews of it, and I'm gonna have to do some exams. I haven't done either of those, so they may be in my shopping basket very shortly. What other things should you do to prepare? Where do you start?
Well, for me, when I'm taking exams, and I still get nervous about doing them. Whenever I go into to do a new exam, I always think, this is going to be tough. I'm going to fail this because I'm very like that. But I will go to my starting point is the Microsoft Learning Paths, which you can find on docs.com, and they are very, very, very good indeed. They've come a long, long way in recent years, and you can go through the modules and learn quite a lot. And from there, and that's what I do to get through my exams. I give myself plenty of time to study. I usually set aside a week to study, start on the Monday and then do the exam on a Friday morning. Back in the good old days before we were all locked up, I used to take my son to school on a Friday morning and then go to the test centre. Last year the only exam I did last year I did as a proctor. That's a whole different story, because I just don't. It's probably why I've not done as many, because I don't enjoy that. But yeah,
same for here. I've got a room with lights, various cameras, all sorts of stuff around me. I'm thinking, how will I do this? I have to go into another room. I have to set something up. Is it very? I've done a couple, and so if you can go in person, there's something quite nice about having a really rubbish cup of coffee from a little machine in the corner, and sitting down and doing it, and then going out and going, right, I've done it, and it will happen. And and then you get that printout at the end.
Oh, exactly. And it's and all the pressure's taken off you from the point of view that it's not your equipment. If something goes wrong with it, it's their problem to solve, not yours. So it's not your internet connection. I like that so much more. It's probably why I'm waiting before I go and do any of the new ones that have just been out recently.
Seems a bit old tech for us Microsoft 365 folks.
I know.
Oh, I've got to do it in person.
It's completely opposite to how I am as a person. It's one of the few things that I like to do in person on premises. It's so weird.
I think it's because it's slightly different, though. It's not about the collaboration aspect. It's because they need to validate that you're in a secure environment. Because the worst thing people can do, I think, to prepare is trying to cheat, because you're only cheating yourself, right? And this is what they're trying to stop, because there's a whole cottage industry of people out there who do try and cheat on exams.
Yep.
And they need to try and prevent that from happening. So you've got to prove that the room is secure. But it is that if that is not the pressure you need, then it's something that perhaps you do need to be in person for. So you said a week, right? That for some of these exams, they're not simple, are they? So, no. But before that week, you've got to know the technology that you're actually going to be tested on, right?
Definitely. And other things that I always like to do is, and everyone learns differently. Some people can just put their nose in a book, but me, I'm more a learn by doing sort of person. So I've got to try this out and see it working for myself. So, and Microsoft 365 makes this quite easy in most regards, in that it's easy to spin up a demo tenant or a trial tenant and get yourself an E5 trial for a while and play about with all the features that you're going to have to learn and get to know for that exam.
And there are a few different options. Obviously, on the partner side, there are demo tenants, though using those for training purposes, you'd have to check the terms and conditions and make sure that you're not doing anything wrong. But most of the time, getting that trial tenant, though, with Microsoft 365, E5, is... People don't seem to realise how easy that is, especially if you work in a large organisation where getting licenses seems complex. You maybe never went through that process where you can just spin up a trial in 5 minutes, get a text confirmation, last 30 days, throw it away at the end. And you can get a longer duration tenant as well with the developer program, as long as you continue to do stuff in it. And that's good if you're perhaps looking at maybe a bit of Power Apps, dev, stuff like that. At least as long as you can show that you're actively doing things with it, then that's not a bad place to be able to get one of those test tenants, because you're never going to be able to test all this stuff out to learn about it in your environment if you've not implemented it yet, are you?
No, exactly. You've got to have a bit of hands-on and know what you're reading up on, what you're studying up for. So that helps enormously. Without a doubt. The other thing that I think is quite beneficial is try and get your hands on some practice tests as well, if you can. And there are some good, genuine, I might add, ones out there that you can purchase, which are really good. And I've spent my own money on those sometimes, and just gets you a feel for what the exams are gonna be like, what sort of questions you can expect. A key tip in Microsoft 365 exams is always know your PowerShell, because Microsoft love their PowerShell. So swat up on anything PowerShell related to the exam that you're going to be doing.
That's caught me out a few times.
Yeah, absolutely. And you just never know what's going to crop up in an exam sometimes. You think you can prepare to the hilt, and then I'm lucky in the sort of last sort of 10 or so that I've done, I failed once, and on that particular, it was one of the old exams, the ones you described as easy. I failed the second one, the 347, on my first attempt, and it was full of questions on Office 365 telemetry, which really flummoxed me, because I'd sort of glanced at it but thinking, I'll not get too many questions on that. Nobody uses that. At least not in my experience, they hadn't. But I got tons of questions. So then for the reset, I swatted up on all that stuff, telemetry, and on the reset, I think I got one question on it. So that's the other thing as well. It can be different. It's look at the questions sometimes. So if you're taking an exam and you don't pass it the first time, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. It's just luck. And
well, I have to admit, I failed my I think it was the Link Server 2013 exam. I think I failed it 2 or 3 times. unfortunately, because I hadn't done it. I thought I knew it well, so I took it, and then I thought I still know it well, and then I took it, and I eventually passed it by going back and trying to fill all those gaps, and that is kind of, it's disappointing, but it happens. And of course, when I was taking that's probably 5 years ago, but by that point, I've been running a UC Architects podcast for several years, talking about this stuff every couple of weeks. So, and doing it obviously with customers as well. I'm not a voice expert in particular, but those aspects, those aspects that I wasn't an expert in, definitely caught me out. And there's no shame in that, because you can't pass everything. And it's not like failing university entry exams. You can take these again. Everybody fails these things at some point. If you didn't, then you're either over preparing probably, or maybe you're some kind of genius. But normal people like us, I think, including most MVPs, will fail these. Absolutely.
Oh, completely. Completely. And it's very easy to fail by a very narrow margin as well, because the passing grade on most Microsoft exams is a score of 700. And I got 700 exactly once, and a colleague of mine, he got 699 once. So, and that's the margin between passing and failing. So,
yeah. And as you say, practice tests, genuine ones. Otherwise, there's a lot of bad stuff out there. There's learning the stuff for yourself. There's reading official material, sanctioned material, proper books, proper practice tests, and it's avoiding bad advice. So there's a lot of bad advice, blogs that try and give you answers to stuff, and those will probably spin you in circles, because somebody unethical enough to do that probably doesn't know the technology well enough either to give you the answers, would be my opinion.
Yeah, true. And know the fact that the exams do get updated regularly as well, so you might not be reading the most up-to-date information on it. They are
absolutely
reviewed regularly.
And I think that's the difference with the practice test, because a practice test isn't exam questions. It's the type of questions that you'll get. So that means that you can be confident in taking something like that, because it's testing your knowledge. It's not seeing whether you know whether to press A or C on the question.
Definitely.
And thinking of these questions, I always used to think, and it's been less and less now, that there was a Microsoft answer for tests, and then there was the real world answer. How applicable is that in this more modern set of exams?
I think less so than it was. I mean, going back to sort of 2003, early 2000s, when I first started taking a few of these exams, and I had a very poor record in those times. Because of that exact reason, there was how you would do it in the real world, and the way Microsoft wanted you to do it in their world. I don't find that anymore, which is probably why I can pass them now.
that is it. And I've noticed that there's people I know who have been on those panels helping design what the exam looks like, and they are consultants doing it in the real world, rather than people who haven't done this but are trying to think about the best way to ask a question. And in those days, they'd make the exam and it would stay static for years, and you'd be tested on how it worked 3 service packs ago. In the Microsoft 365 world, as you say, it's updated on a regular basis as well.
Completely, yeah.
So any last tips then before we wrap up, other than buy your book?
Well,
we can say that.
Well, in my books, I do try and give you some good practice questions and mock exams at the end, which hopefully are as close to what you'll experience in the actual tests. But I just say, just prepare, and don't worry about failing. Give it a go. If like me, you're not particularly academic, and somebody's trying to motivate you to do this for your career or a promotion or whatever, give it a try. What's the worst that can happen? If you don't pass first time, you get a lovely little score sheet which shows you where you were weak, where you need to improve on. Give it another try, and chances are you'll get through it next time. And it makes you feel really good when you get that nice little pass certificate. And then you get obsessed after that. You start collecting badges and sharing them on LinkedIn, and oh god, the badges on LinkedIn, it's mad, isn't it?
And if I guess if cost is a factor as well, then it's worth looking out for Microsoft conferences. So at several recent conferences, both the in-person ones and online, I think it's the last few Ignites as well, you'll watch out for, but by attending the conference, then you'll be signposted perhaps at some point, there's no guarantee of this, to perhaps completing a few, I think last time, a few Microsoft Learn objectives. Sometimes they might offer this anyway, whereby attending the conference, you'll get an exam voucher. So you can use that after, and you've got a shot at the exam. And especially if you're doing your first one and you know it quite well, then there's no reason not to try and backfill those areas and have a go and see how well you do.
Exactly.
Yourself.
Exactly. No, that's a really good tip, Steve. And it's the Cloud Skills Challenge, it was called, isn't it? And they're really good things to do anyway on Ignite and the like, just to improve your knowledge anyway. And from that you can qualify for that voucher. Be careful that you use it within good time though, because they do expire. But yeah, great tip.
So before we go, we'll just remind us names of both of your books, so people can have a look for them. I think they're both by Pact Publishing, is it?
That's right, Pact. And the first one is Microsoft 365 Security Administration, the MS500 Exam Guide. And then there is the newest one, just been out for a couple of months, Microsoft Teams Administration MS700 Exam Guide, co-authored with my good friend Nate Chamberlain, fellow MVP. Really good guy.
Thanks for joining us on the show today.
Thanks, Steve. Take care.